Okay, welcome to section 4.1, which is dealing with decimals. We're going to talk, first of all, intro to decimals, talking about the placements, and then we're going to go from decimal to fractions, and then fractions for decimals. So first, I've got this kind of already out for us for the decimal spots, but if we read this number, it's 1,000, so the 1 is in the thousand spot, 700, 7 is in the hundred spot, 60 is in the 10 spot, the 8 is in the 1, and then the 4, it's 0.4, that's in the tenths. Another way we can write tenths, and we can write this as a fraction, is it's 1 over 10. Hundredths is the 9, which is 1 over 100 is a fraction. Thousandth is, the 5 is in the 1,000th spot, and finally 10,000. Okay. So, 0.5. We want to convert this to a fraction. Well, first of all, everybody knows 0.5 is 1/2. But how do we get that? Well, for starters, think about this for a second. The 5 is in the 10th spot. So you put the 5 over the 10. What does that reduce to? 1/2. Let's look at 0.25. Most of us in here probably recognize that this should be 1/4. So how do we get 1/4? Well, you take that 25, so look at 0.25, you put the 25 over, you look at that last number, the 5, it's in the 100th spot. So now we could say, okay, 25. Well, if I divide by 25, at the top I get 1, but then if I divide by 25 at the bottom, 25 goes into 100. Think about quarters to dollars, 4. That's why we get 1/4. Same thing with here. That 4 is in the 100th, so you would say 44 over 100. Now, we can divide it by 2, and you get 22 over 50. Then what you do is you also can divide it by 2 again, which this would be our final answer, because that goes into 11 over 25. We cannot put any number. Now some of us could go ahead and if you want to think about it this way, once you get 44 over 100, 4 can go into both as well, which that would give you 11 over 25. Now I'm going to look at this 5. What position is that in? Well, 125, that's in the 1,000th position. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide each by 5. So 5 goes into 125. 25 times. 5 goes into 1,200. And then finally, divide by 5 again. So you get 5 over 40, which if you divide by 5 one final time, you get 1/8. Now, some of us could could see where I'm getting at with this. So we could take 125 over 1,000. What I always like doing is dividing see if the top goes in the bottom evenly. In this case, one and 125 goes into 1,008 times. So fractions to decimals. So now this 1/2, now right off the bat, I mean, we're going to say, okay, that has to be 0.5. We've already looked at that when we went from decimal to fraction. But why? Well, if we take that 2 and it goes into 1, it goes into 0 times. So you get to put a decimal there and then add a 0. Now we think that as a 10. Now 2 goes into 10 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. Subtract it and you get 0 remainder. That's why it's 0.5. 1/4. Okay, we've already talked about that. So some of us know that's what it is. But the real reason behind this is 4 goes into 1 0 times. So you put your decimal. So 4 goes into now 10 times 2. 2 times 4 is 8. You have to subtract it. 20 or 2. You have to put down another 0. Anytime that you're still trying to work this out with a remainder, put a 0. So then I bring that 0 down to make it 20. Now 4 goes into 25 times. 5 times 4 is 20. That's no remainder. So this is what we come up with by just using our brains. Okay, 3/5. 5 goes into 3 0 times. But now how many times does 5 go into 30? Put a point there. 6. 6 times 5 is 30. So you don't have a remainder. So my answer is actually 0.6. Okay, now 28 over 100. Well, we can say, okay, 100 goes into 28. We already know that 0 times. So now we put a point and put a 0. So 100 goes into now 282 times. That gives you 200. Subtract it. 8 0. So I need to add another 0 and carry it down. 0. So now 100 goes into 800. This right here. 0.28. Now one thing I like dealing with this too is you can always start with the 28.0, and then anytime you divide, you go back that many zeros. So 1, 2, I go back 2 zeros, 1 with it right there. That's my due decimal, which is 0.28. Same thing as we're dividing it. Same thing with this one. We could just go ahead and say 100 goes into 217. Okay, right off the bat, that would be 2 times, which is 200. Subtract it, you get 17. Point, it does not go into that, so we put our decimal there and a 0. Bring it down to a 0. 100 goes into 171 times. Subtract. You get 7. Bring down another 0. 7,000, which is 2.17. Or like I said before, you could, since this has got 2 zeros, there's your decimal technically, so you'd go over 2. There's your new decimal, which is the same as right here. And finally, without dividing out this time, I see that I've got 3759.0. Now I'm dividing it by 1,000, which has got 3 zeros, so I'm moving the decimal back 3 spots. So now that's going to be my final answer will be 3.759. You do not have to put that 0 there. So that concludes my intro to decimals. Next, my section this is one of my 4-part series. My next one's rounding decimals. Then I'm going to do adding and subtracting. And then finally multiplying. Thank you for listening.